Before we begin, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Nairobi, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to know. Don't just sit back. Tell me where in the world you are. Now, let's dive into the story. The dust rose like angry ghosts around her knees as she hit the ground. Nalady's palms scraped against the gravel, tiny stones embedding themselves into her skin like accusation marks. The black Mercedes didn't even slow down. It roared forward, leaving a cloud of red earth that settled on her torn dress, her tangled hair, her cracked lips. She tasted blood and dirt. Behind her, a small boy screamed her name, but the sound was swallowed by the engine's growl. The billionaire's face had been cold, his eyes like glass marbles, empty and hard. She had only asked for a ride to the hospital. Her grandson was dying. The man had looked at her bare feet, her sun-damaged skin, her desperate eyes, and said one word before his driver shoved her out. Disgusting. That word hung in the air now like smoke. Nalady lay there for a moment, feeling the sharp heat of humiliation burn hotter than the sun on her back. Cars passed, none stopped. A woman in a blue sedan looked away quickly, pretending not to see. A truck driver honked as if she were an animal blocking the road. Nalady pushed herself up slowly, her knees shaking. Blood dripped from her palms onto the white gravel. She wiped her hands on her dress and kept walking. The hospital was still 5 kilometers away. Her grandson, Tumelo, had been coughing blood for 3 days. The clinic had sent them away, saying they needed a specialist. A specialist cost money she didn't have. She had been walking since dawn, carrying the boy on her back until her legs gave out. That's when she saw the Mercedes stopped at the petrol station. The man inside wore a suit that probably cost more than her entire village earned in a year. She had knocked on the window, her voice breaking as she begged. "Please, sir, my grandson is dying. Just a ride to the hospital." He had rolled down the window halfway, looked at her like she was dirt, and told his driver to remove her. Now, alone on the roadside, Nalady felt something sharper than shame. It was anger, not the loud kind, but the quiet type that burns slow and changes a person from the inside. She touched the small leather pouch hanging from her neck. Inside was a single dried root, given to her by her grandmother decades ago. It was said to have power, the kind that could heal or reveal truth. She had never used it, never believed in such things fully. But as she stumbled forward, legs aching, throat dry, she whispered a prayer her grandmother taught her. "Let the proud fall, let the blind see, let those who throw others away find themselves thrown." The words felt old and heavy in her mouth. The sun beat down mercilessly. Sweat mixed with blood on her palms. Her feet dragged through the dust, but she kept moving. Somewhere behind her, that Mercedes was speeding toward a future its owner could not see. Somewhere ahead, fate was already turning its slow, patient wheel. The hospital loomed in the distance, white and sterile against the brown earth. Nalady's vision blurred with exhaustion and tears she refused to let fall. Tumelo needed her strong, not broken. She thought of his small face, his trusting eyes, the way he called her Go-Go even though she was all he had left in the world. His mother, Nalady's daughter, had died giving birth. His father had disappeared before he was born. The boy was 7 now, smart and brave, but fragile. The cough had started after the rains, innocent at first, then deeper, wetter, until blood began to stain his lips. The village healer had shaken her head. "This is beyond herbs," she had said. "He needs a doctor. A real one." Nalady had sold everything, her goats, her small radio, even the blanket her mother had woven. It was not enough. The clinic wanted payment up front. She had begged, pleaded, offered to work for free. They refused. So she started walking, Tumelo on her back, praying for a miracle. That Mercedes had felt like an answer. When the billionaire's window rolled down, she had seen her reflection in the glass. An old woman, weathered and poor, desperation carved into every line of her face. She had seen his disgust, too. It was instant, reflexive, the way a man swats a fly. She was nothing to him, less than nothing. The driver grabbed her shoulder, pulled her back, and the door slammed shut. Through the tinted glass, she saw the billionaire already on his phone, laughing at something, as if she had never existed. Then the car lurched forward, and she fell. Now, alone on the roadside, Naledi felt something sharper than shame. It was anger, not the loud kind, but the quiet type that burns slow and changes a person from the inside. She touched the small leather pouch hanging from her neck. Inside was a single dried root, given to her by her grandmother decades ago. It was said to have power, the kind that could heal or reveal truth. She had never used it, never believed in such things fully. But as she stumbled forward, legs aching, throat dry, she whispered a prayer her grandmother taught her. Let the proud fall, let the blind see, let those who throw others away find themselves thrown. The words felt old and heavy in her mouth. The sun beat down mercilessly. Sweat mixed with blood on her palms. Her feet dragged through the dust, but she kept moving. Somewhere behind her, that Mercedes was speeding toward a future its owner could not see. Somewhere ahead, fate was already turning its slow, patient wheel. The hospital loomed in the distance, white and sterile against the brown earth. Naledi's vision blurred with exhaustion and tears she refused to let fall. Tumelo needed her strong, not broken. She thought of his small face, his trusting eyes, the way he called her Gogo even though she was all he had left in the world. His mother, Naledi's daughter, had died giving birth. His father had disappeared before he was born. The boy was 7 now, smart and brave, but fragile. The cough had started after the rains, innocent at first, then deeper, wetter, until blood began to stain his lips. The village healer had shaken her head. This is beyond herbs, she had said. He needs a doctor, a real one. Naledi had sold everything, her goats, her small radio, even the blanket her mother had woven. It was not enough. The clinic wanted payment up front. She had begged, pleaded, offered to work for free. They refused. So she started walking, Tumelo on her back, praying for a miracle. That Mercedes had felt like an answer. When the billionaire's window rolled down, she had seen her reflection in the glass. An old woman, weathered and poor, desperation carved into every line of her face. She had seen his disgust, too. It was instant, reflexive, the way a man swats a fly. She was nothing to him, less than nothing. The driver grabbed her shoulder, pulled her back, and the door slammed shut. Through the tinted glass, she saw the billionaire already on his phone, laughing at something, as if she had never existed. Then the car lurched forward, and she fell. Now, alone on the roadside, Naledi felt something sharper than shame. It was anger, not the loud kind, but the quiet type that burns slow and changes a person from the inside. She touched the small leather pouch hanging from her neck. Inside was a single dried root, given to her by her grandmother decades ago. It was said to have power, the kind that could heal or reveal truth. She had never used it, never believed in such things fully. But as she stumbled forward, legs aching, throat dry, she whispered a prayer her grandmother taught her. Let the proud fall, let the blind see, let those who throw others away find themselves thrown. The words felt old and heavy in her mouth. The sun beat down mercilessly. Sweat mixed with blood on her palms. Her feet dragged through the dust, but she kept moving. Somewhere behind her, that Mercedes was speeding toward a future its owner could not see. Somewhere ahead, fate was already turning its slow, patient wheel. The hospital loomed in the distance, white and sterile against the brown earth. Naledi's vision blurred with exhaustion and tears she refused to let fall. Tumelo needed her strong, not broken. She thought of his small face, his trusting eyes, the way he called her Gogo even though she was all he had left in the world. His mother, Naledi's daughter, had died giving birth. His father had disappeared before he was born. The boy was 7 now,
smart and brave, but fragile. The cough had started after the rains, innocent at first, then deeper, wetter, until blood began to stain his lips. The village healer had shaken her head. "This is beyond herbs," she had said. "He needs a doctor, a real one." The lady had sold everything, her goats, her small radio, even the blanket her mother had woven. It was not enough. The clinic wanted payment up front. She had begged, pleaded, offered to work for free. They refused. So she started walking, Tumelo on her back, praying for a miracle. That Mercedes had felt like an answer. When the billionaire's window rolled down, she had seen her reflection in the glass. An old woman, weathered and poor, desperation carved into every line of her face. She had seen his disgust, too. It was instant, reflexive, the way a man swats a fly.
But later that night, Thabo stood in his son's room, watching the boy sleep. Karabo's face was flushed, his breathing shallow and ragged. Sweat darkened his curly hair. His small chest rose and fell unevenly, like a broken machine struggling to work. Thabo felt something twist in his gut. Fear. He hated the feeling. Fear was for weak men, for people who didn't control their world. He controlled everything: money, power, people. But he couldn't control this. He couldn't write a check to make his son's fever disappear. He couldn't bully a disease into submission. It made him angry. Angry at the doctors who couldn't fix it. Angry at Lindiwe for crying. Angry at himself for feeling helpless. He left the room and poured himself whiskey, drinking until the fear dulled into numbness. Outside, the city glittered like a treasure chest. Thabo stared at it and felt nothing. Somewhere out there, the old woman he had thrown from his car was probably dead by now, or maybe still walking. He didn't care. She was irrelevant. But Karabo's condition worsened overnight. By morning, the boy couldn't stand. His skin was hot to the touch, his lips cracked and pale. Lindiwe was frantic, shaking Thabo awake at dawn. "We need to take him to the hospital, now." They rushed to Santon Mediclinic, the best private hospital money could buy. Doctors swarmed around Karabo, running tests, taking blood, asking questions Thabo couldn't answer. Hours passed. Thabo paced the waiting room like a caged lion, barking at nurses, demanding updates. Finally, a doctor emerged, his face grim. Dr. Kumalo was one of the top pediatricians in the country, a man Thabo had donated millions to. He owed Thabo. Everyone owed Thabo. "Mr. Malefe," the doctor said carefully, "we've run every test. Your son has a rare infection. It's attacking his lungs and heart. We've tried every antibiotic we have. Nothing is working." Thabo's world tilted. "What do you mean, nothing is working? Fix him." The doctor hesitated. "There's one treatment. It's experimental. A traditional healer in the rural areas claimed to have cured a similar case years ago, but it's unverified. We'd need to find her." Thabo's lip curled. "A traditional healer? You want me to trust my son's life to some witch doctor?" Dr. Kumalo met his eyes. "Right now, Mr. Malefe, she's your only option." Thabo felt the ground crack beneath him. His empire, his money, his power, none of it mattered. His son was dying, and the only person who could save him was someone he would never have looked at twice. Someone exactly like the beggar he had thrown from his car. The irony was sharp and bitter. He thought of that woman's face, her desperate eyes, her bleeding palms. He had felt nothing then. Now he felt everything. Fear, rage, and something worse, shame. But he shoved it down. He didn't have time for feelings. "Find her," he told the doctor. "I don't care what it costs. I don't care where she is. Find her and bring her here." Dr. Kumalo nodded and left. Thabo sat down heavily, his hands shaking. Lindiwe sat beside him, silent. They didn't touch. They hadn't touched in years. Outside the window, the city hummed with life, indifferent and endless.
Somewhere in that vastness, a woman walked with a dying boy on her back, carrying a secret in a leather pouch, and fate, patient and cruel, was bringing them together. Naledi finally reached the hospital as the sun climbed high and merciless. Her feet were bleeding, her dress soaked with sweat and dust. Tumelo was barely conscious on her back, his small body limp and burning with fever. She staggered through the entrance, and a nurse rushed forward, eyes wide with alarm. "Bring him here," the nurse said, guiding them to a bed. Naledi laid Tumelo down gently, brushing his damp hair from his forehead. His eyes fluttered open briefly, unfocused and glazed. "Gogo," he whispered. "Shh, rest now, my boy." She turned to the nurse. "Please, help him. He's been coughing blood." The nurse checked his pulse, his breathing, her face tightening with concern. She called for a doctor. Within minutes, a young physician arrived, Dr. Mbatha, tired but kind. He examined Tumelo quickly, then looked at Naledi with careful eyes. "How long has he been like this?" 3 days, Naledi said. "Maybe 4. I brought him as fast as I could." Dr. Mbatha nodded. "We'll do what we can, but I need you to fill out forms, insurance, payment information." Naledi's heart sank. "I have no insurance. I have no money. I sold everything. Please, just save him. I'll work. I'll clean floors. I'll do anything." Dr. Mbatha's expression softened. "Wait here." He disappeared into an office, and Naledi heard raised voices, the sharp bark of someone in authority. Naledi sat beside Tumelo, holding his small hand, whispering prayers her grandmother had taught her. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Finally, Dr. Mbatha returned, his face apologetic. "Tumelo is stable for now, but his infection is aggressive. The antibiotics are helping, but not enough. There's something unusual about it. I've seen this once before, years ago in a rural village. An old healer cured it with a traditional remedy." Naledi's breath caught. "A healer?" Dr. Mbatha nodded. "She was famous in the area. People came from everywhere. But she disappeared after her daughter died. Some say she went into the mountains. Others say she wanders, helping those who need it." Naledi touched the leather pouch at her neck, the root inside pulsing warmly. "My grandmother was a healer. She gave me this root before she died. She said it could cure what doctors cannot." Dr. Mbatha's eyes widened. "May I see it?" Naledi hesitated, then opened the pouch carefully. Inside was a gnarled root, dark and ancient, etched with strange markings. It smelled faintly of earth and smoke. Dr. Mbatha leaned closer, his scientific skepticism battling with something older, something instinctive. "I've read about roots like this. They contain compounds we don't understand. If this is what I think it is, it could save him, but we'd need to prepare it correctly. One wrong step and it could be toxic." Naledi felt the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. "My grandmother taught me the preparation. It takes 3 days. Water from a pure spring, boiled under moonlight, mixed with the root shavings and specific herbs. I know the ritual. I know the words." Dr. Mbatha looked at her intently. "If you're willing to try, I'll support you. But understand, if this goes wrong, the hospital will not take responsibility. I'm doing this off the record." Naledi met his gaze without flinching. "I understand, and I thank you for your courage." They made a plan. Naledi would begin the preparation tonight, gathering what she needed from the hospital garden and a nearby stream. Dr. Mbatha would keep Tumelo stable with modern medicine, while the traditional remedy was prepared. It was a partnership between 2 worlds, science and tradition, desperation and hope. As Naledi gathered her supplies, moving quietly through the hospital grounds under the rising moon, she thought of the billionaire in the Mercedes. She thought of his disgust, his cruelty, his indifference. She wondered if he ever thought of her. Probably not. Men like him never looked back. But fate was already weaving their stories together, pulling threads tighter with every passing hour. That night, under a sky full of stars, Naledi began the ritual her grandmother had taught her. She boiled water from the stream in a clay pot borrowed from a sympathetic nurse. She shaved the root carefully, adding each sliver to the water while whispering ancient words in a language older than the country itself. The mixture turned dark and thick, releasing a pungent aroma that made her eyes water. She worked through the night, stirring, praying, remembering her grandmother's steady hands, her wise eyes, her warnings. This root is powerful, child. It heals the body, but it also reveals the soul. Those who take it will face their truth. Use it only when the need is pure. Naledi's need was pure.
Tumelo was innocent, blameless, loved. She would do anything to save him. By dawn, the first dose was ready. She brought it to Dr. Mabatha, who tested it cautiously, analyzing its properties with whatever equipment he could access quietly. His eyes widened. This is extraordinary. The chemical composition is unlike anything I've seen. It might actually work. They administered the first dose to Tumelo through a carefully measured IV drip, watching his vitals closely. For an hour, nothing changed. Then, slowly, his breathing deepened. His fever began to drop. Color returned to his cheeks. Dr. Mabatha smiled, cautious but hopeful. It's working. Naledi collapsed into a chair, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, ancestors. Thank you, God. Thank you, grandmother. Outside, the sun rose over Johannesburg, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. In a mansion across the city, Thabo Molefe's son was getting worse, and somewhere in the invisible web of fate, the threads were pulling tighter, drawing the billionaire and the beggar toward a collision neither could escape. Naledi didn't know it yet, but soon she would face the man who had thrown her into the dust, and when that moment came, she would hold his son's life in her hands. The choice she made then would define them both: forgiveness or justice, mercy or revenge. The root that could heal could also reveal, and the proud man who had shown her nothing but contempt was about to learn what it meant to beg. Karabo's conditions spiraled overnight. His fever spiked to dangerous levels, his small body convulsing with seizures that left Lindiwe sobbing and Thabo frozen with terror. Dr. Kumalo tried everything: stronger antibiotics, experimental antivirals, even a risky procedure to drain fluid from the boy's lungs. Nothing worked. The infection was unlike anything they had encountered, aggressive and resistant, as if it had intelligence and malice. By morning, the doctor's face was drawn and pale. Mr. Molefe, we're losing him. His organs are starting to fail. We have maybe 48 hours. Thabo's legs nearly gave out. He gripped the wall for support, his carefully constructed world collapsing around him. Find the healer, he growled. I don't care if you have to search every village in the country. Find her. Dr. Kumalo nodded grimly. We've been trying. The woman I mentioned is difficult to locate. She doesn't have a phone, no permanent address, but there are rumors she's been seen near Johannesburg recently. Some say she came to help her grandson. Thabo's mind flashed suddenly to the beggar woman. The timing, the desperation in her eyes, the way she had mentioned a hospital. A cold realization crept over him. Could it be the same woman? He shook the thought away. Impossible. That filthy beggar couldn't be a healer. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it grew quickly, fed by fear and desperation. Send someone to check the public hospitals, he ordered. Every one. If there's an old woman with a sick child, I want to know. Dr. Kumalo looked confused, but nodded. I'll make calls. Thabo returned to his son's bedside. Karabo lay still, his skin ashen, his breathing mechanical. Lindiwe sat beside him, holding his hand, her face streaked with tears. Thabo wanted to comfort her, but didn't know how. He had spent years building walls between them, and now he couldn't find the door. He's going to die, isn't he? Lindiwe whispered. Thabo couldn't answer. He couldn't admit it out loud. Admitting it would make it real, and he refused to accept a reality where his son died.
"I'll fix this," he said, his voice hard. "I always fix things." Lindiwe looked at him with hollow eyes. "You can't buy your way out of everything, Thabo. Some things can't be fixed with money." He turned away, her words cutting deeper than she knew. Outside the hospital room, Thabo made calls. He mobilized his security team, his lawyers, his connections in government. He offered rewards, threatened consequences, pulled every string he had. "Find the healer. Bring her to me. I don't care what it takes." His people scattered across the city like hunting dogs. They visited clinics, questioned nurses, bribed administrators, and slowly a trail began to emerge. An old woman had been admitted to a public hospital 2 days ago with a dying grandson. She had no money, but was being treated by a sympathetic doctor. She matched the description: an elderly woman, weathered, poor, carrying a leather pouch. Thabo's heart pounded. He grabbed his keys and headed for the door. Lindiwe called after him. "Where are you going?" "To get the only person who can save our son," he said. When he arrived at the public hospital, the contrast was jarring. Where Santon Medic Clinic was pristine and luxurious, this place was overcrowded and worn. The walls needed paint, the floors were cracked, people sat in hallways waiting for care that came too slowly. Thabo pushed past them, his expensive suit and arrogant posture clearing a path. He found the administration desk and slammed his hand down. "I'm looking for an old woman. She came here 2 days ago with a sick child. Where is she?" The receptionist, a tired woman named Zanele, looked up with irritation. "We have many patients, sir. You'll need to be more specific." Thabo's patience snapped. "Listen carefully. I'm Thabo Molefe. You've heard of me. I own half this city. If you don't help me right now, I'll have this hospital shut down by tomorrow." Zanele's face hardened. "Threats don't work on me, Mr. Molefe, but if you calm down and ask politely, I might help." Thabo felt his control slipping. He was not used to being spoken to this way, but desperation made him swallow his pride. "Please," he said through clenched teeth, "I need to find this woman. My son is dying. She's the only one who can help." Zanele's expression softened slightly. She typed on her computer, scrolling through records. "There's an elderly woman in Ward C. She's been here caring for her grandson. The boy is recovering now, surprisingly fast, some kind of traditional treatment." Thabo's pulse quickened. "Take me to her, now." Zanele hesitated. "Visiting hours are over, and she's in a restricted area." Thabo pulled out his wallet, counted bills, and slid them across the desk. More than Zanele made in 2 months. She stared at the money, then at him, her face conflicted. Finally, she took the bills and stood. "Follow me." They walked through corridors that smelled of disinfectant and suffering. Thabo's polished shoes clicked on linoleum floors. They passed patients in wheelchairs, families sleeping on benches, nurses moving with exhausted determination. It was a world Thabo had forgotten existed, a world he had escaped and never looked back at. But now he was walking into its heart, humbled and afraid. Zanele stopped outside a ward and pointed. "She's in there, the old woman by the window." Thabo looked through the glass and saw her. Naledi sat beside a small bed, her hand resting on a boy's forehead. Even from a distance, even in the dim light, he recognized her. The beggar from the road, the woman he had thrown into the dust, the woman whose blood he had left on the gravel. His stomach dropped. Fate had a cruel sense of humor. The only person who could save his son was the person he had treated with utter contempt, and now he had to go in there and beg her for mercy. Thabo took a breath, steadied himself, and pushed open the door. Naledi looked up, and their eyes met. Recognition flashed across her face, followed by something harder, anger, and maybe, just maybe, a glimmer of satisfaction. Naledi's hands stilled on Tumelo's forehead. Her heart, which had been calm and steady while caring for her grandson, now hammered against her ribs. The man standing in the doorway was impossible to forget. That cold face, those glass marble eyes, the expensive suit that probably cost more than her entire life's earnings. He looked different now, though, smaller somehow. His confidence had cracks in it, and his eyes were not empty anymore. They were desperate. Thabo stood frozen, the words he had prepared dissolving on his tongue. He had imagined this moment differently. He would stride in, offer money, demand her help, and she would obey because everyone obeyed him. But now, standing before her with her blood still fresh in his memory, he felt something unfamiliar crawling up his spine. Shame. "You," Naledi said, quietly. Her voice was not loud, but it filled the room like thunder. Thabo swallowed. "Yes, me." She stood slowly, placing herself between him and Tumelo, a silent barrier. Her eyes never left his face. "What do you want?" "My son is dying," Thabo said, the words bitter in his mouth. "The doctors say you're the only one who can save him. I need your help."
Naledi tilted her head, studying him with the intensity of a woman who had seen through too many lies. "You need my help." Thabo nodded. "Yes, I'll pay you anything. Name your price." The air between them grew thick and heavy. Naledi took a step closer, and Thabo resisted the urge to step back. "I asked you for help once," she said softly. "Do you remember? On the road. I begged you for a ride. My grandson was dying, just like your son is dying now. And what did you do?" Tabo's jaw tightened. He wanted to defend himself, to explain, but there was no explanation that didn't make him sound like the monster he was. "I was wrong," he said stiffly. "I see that now." "You see it now," Naledi repeated, her voice edged with iron. "Now that you need me, now that your money and power can't save you. How convenient." Thabo felt anger rising, the old instinct to lash out, to control, but he forced it down. Shouting at her would not save Karabo. "Please," he said, and the word tasted like ash. "I'm begging you. My son is innocent. He didn't do anything to you. Don't let him die because of my mistake." Naledi's eyes softened for a moment, not for Thabo, but for the mention of an innocent child. She understood that pain too well. She knew what it was like to watch someone you love slip away while the world turned its back. But she also knew something else. This man needed to understand the weight of his cruelty. If she simply gave him what he wanted, he would learn nothing. He would return to his mansion, his empire, his cold indifference, and the world would continue to suffer under men like him. "No," she said. Tabo's eyes widened. "What?" "I said no. I will not help you." Tabo's composure shattered. "You can't be serious. My son will die." Naledi stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt louder than any shout. "And my grandson was dying when I knocked on your window. Did you care? Did you stop? Or did you throw me into the dirt like garbage?" Tabo's face flushed. "I made a mistake. I'm sorry." "Are you?" Naledi challenged. "Or are you just sorry because now you need something from me? If your son were healthy, would you be here? Would you even remember my face?" Thabo opened his mouth and closed it. The truth was obvious. He wouldn't have remembered. He didn't remember anyone he deemed beneath him. Naledi turned back to Tumelo, adjusting his blanket with gentle hands. "Go back to your hospital, Mr. Malif. Go back to your money and your power. They can't help you now, but maybe they'll comfort you while your son dies." Thabo felt panic claw at his chest. "Wait, please. I'll do anything. Anything." Naledi glanced over her shoulder. "Anything? Then feel what I felt. Walk back to your car knowing your child is dying and there's nothing you can do. Sit with that helplessness. Choke on it." She turned back to Tumelo, dismissing him. Thabo stood there, trembling with rage and desperation. He wanted to grab her, to force her, to make her obey, but he knew that would only cement her refusal, and somewhere, buried beneath his fury, a small voice whispered that she was right. He had thrown her away like trash. Now she was returning the favor. He stumbled out of the ward, his vision blurring. In the hallway, he leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Zanele, the receptionist, watched him from a distance, her expression unreadable. She had seen powerful men humbled before,
but never like this, never so completely. Tabo pulled out his phone with shaking hands and called Lindiwe. His voice cracked as he spoke. "I found her, the healer, but she won't help." Lindiwe's sob echoed through the line. "What are we going to do?" "I don't know," Tabo admitted, and the confession felt like drowning. For the first time in his adult life, Tabo Malef had no plan, no strategy, no escape. He sat down on a bench in the hallway, surrounded by people he had spent his life ignoring, and buried his face in his hands. Inside the ward, Naledi sat beside Tumelo, her heart heavy. She had meant every word she said to Tabo, but as she looked at her grandson's peaceful face, slowly healing from the root's medicine, she thought of another child lying in a hospital bed across the city, innocent, blameless, dying. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. The root heals the body, but it also reveals the soul. Those who take it will face their truth. Naledi closed her eyes and prayed for guidance. She had the power to save a life, but did she have the right to withhold it, even from a man who deserved nothing? The answer, she knew, would define who she was, not who Tabo was, who she was. And that, she realized with a sinking heart, made the choice much harder. Tabo didn't go home that night. He couldn't face Lindiwe, couldn't sit beside Karabo's bed and pretend he had hope. Instead, he drove aimlessly through Johannesburg, the city lights blurring through his windshield. He ended up in Soweto, the township where he had grown up, a place he hadn't visited in over 20 years. The streets were narrower than he remembered, the houses smaller. Children played soccer under flickering streetlights. Women sat outside cooking pop on open fires. The smell of wood smoke and grilled meat filled the air. It was a world away from Sandton, but it felt more real, more honest. Tabo parked his Mercedes near his childhood house, a small brick house with a rusted gate. It looked abandoned now, windows dark, yard overgrown. His parents had died years ago, within months of each other, and Tabo had sold the house without setting foot inside. He had nothing to do with his past, with the poverty and struggle that had marked his early years. But now, sitting in his expensive car outside that humble house, he felt something crack inside him. He had spent his entire life running from this place, from these people, from the memory of being powerless and poor. And in running, he had become exactly the kind of man he once hated, the kind who looked down on others, the kind who threw desperate women out of cars. A woman walked past, carrying a baby on her back and a bag of groceries in her arms. She glanced at the Mercedes, then at Tabo, and smiled politely. "Good evening, sir." Tabo nodded, unable to speak. The woman continued on, humming a hymn, and Tabo watched her disappear into the night. She reminded him of his mother who had cleaned other people's houses to keep him in school, his mother who had walked miles every day because they couldn't afford bus fare, his mother who loved him fiercely, despite having nothing to give but her labor and her prayers. He had repaid her by becoming someone she wouldn't recognize, someone who valued money over people, someone who threw desperate women into the dust. Tabo's phone rang. It was Dr. Kumalo. "Mr. Malef, Karabo's vitals are dropping. We're doing everything we can, but you need to come back, now." Tabo started the car, his hands numb on the steering wheel. As he drove back towards Sandton, he made a decision. Tomorrow, he would return to the public hospital. He would face Naledi again, and this time he would not offer money. He would offer something far more difficult, the truth. When he arrived at the hospital, Lindiwe was standing outside Karabo's room, her face pale and hollow. "He's asking for you," she whispered. Tabo entered and knelt beside the bed. Karabo's eyes opened slowly, glassy with fever. "Papa," the boy whispered, "I'm here, son. Am I going to die?" The question hit Tabo like a physical blow. He wanted to lie, to comfort, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he took his son's small hand and held it tight. "No," he said firmly, "I won't let that happen. I promise." Karabo smiled weakly and closed his eyes. Tabo stayed there, holding his son's hand, feeling time slip away like sand through his fingers. Outside the window, the city continued its endless rhythm, indifferent to one man's breaking heart. Inside the ward, Naledi sat beside Tamelo, her heart heavy. She had meant every word she said to Tabo, but as she looked at her grandson's peaceful face, slowly healing from the root's medicine, she thought of another child lying in a hospital bed across the city, innocent, blameless, dying. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. The root heals the body, but it also reveals the soul. Those who take it will face their truth. Naledi closed her eyes and prayed for guidance. She had the power to save a life, but did she have the right to withhold it, even from a man who deserved nothing? The answer, she knew, would define who she was, not who Tabo was, who she was. And that, she realized with a sinking heart, made the choice much harder.
The shock, the desperation, the dawning realization that his money meant nothing here. She had wanted him to feel that, wanted him to understand what it was like to be powerless, and he had. She had seen it in his eyes. But was that enough? Was revenge worth more than a child's life? She touched the leather pouch, the root inside cool and still now. Her grandmother had given it to her with a warning. This is not just medicine, child. It's a test of who you are when you have power and someone else does not. Naledi closed her eyes. She knew what she had to do, but knowing and doing were two very different things. Dr. Mbatha found her in the early morning, sitting in the same spot, her face lined with exhaustion and decision. "You haven't slept," he observed gently. Naledi shook her head. "Doctor, if I told you there was another child who needed this root, would you help me prepare it?" Dr. Mbatha's eyes widened. "The billionaire's son?" Naledi nodded. "I turned him away yesterday, but I can't let a child die because his father is a cruel man. The boy is innocent." Dr. Mbatha smiled. "Your grandmother would be proud. I'll help you prepare it." They began the process immediately, carefully shaving more of the root, boiling fresh water, adding the herbs with precision. The ritual took hours, and Naledi worked without speaking, her hands steady even as her heart wrestled with conflicting emotions. She was not doing this for Thabo. She was doing it because a child deserved to live, because mercy was not the same as weakness, because her grandmother had raised her to be better than the people who hurt her. By midday, the medicine was ready. Naledi poured it into a small glass bottle, sealed it carefully, and held it up to the light. The liquid was dark and mysterious, almost black, with flecks of gold that caught the sun. It looked like night and stars mixed together, like hope and judgment in one dose. Dr. Mbatha watched her. "What will you do now?" Naledi took a deep breath. "I'm going to take it to him. But first, he needs to understand what this costs. Not money, something more." Dr. Mbatha nodded. "Wisdom is expensive, much more than gold." Naledi wrapped the bottle carefully in cloth and placed it in her bag. She kissed Tumelo's forehead, whispered a prayer over him, and left the ward. Outside, the sun was high and hot, the same sun that had beaten down on her when Thabo threw her from his car. The same dust rose from the roads, the same city hummed with indifference. But Naledi walked through it with purpose now, no longer a beggar, no longer invisible. She was a healer carrying a cure, and she was going to deliver it on her terms. Thabo would receive mercy, but he would also receive truth, and when the two collided, he would either become a better man or remain the monster he had been. That choice, Naledi knew, was his to make. She could heal his son's body, but only he could heal his own soul. The root would reveal which path he chose, and the world would watch. Thabo sat beside Karabo's bed, watching his son's chest rise and fall in shallow, desperate breaths.
The machines beeped rhythmically, each sound marking time slipping away. Lindiwe had fallen asleep in the chair across from him, her face streaked with dried tears. Thabo hadn't slept in 2 days. Fear had carved deep lines into his face, and his expensive suit was wrinkled and stained with coffee. Dr. Kumalo had stopped giving updates. There was nothing left to say. They were waiting now, waiting for a miracle or for death. Thabo had never felt so powerless. He had built an empire on control, on bending the world to his will, but he couldn't control this, couldn't buy his way out, couldn't threaten or manipulate or charm. His son was dying, and all his wealth was worthless. A nurse knocked softly and entered. "Mr. Molefe, there's someone here to see you, an old woman. She says it's urgent." Thabo's heart lurched. He stood quickly, almost knocking over his chair. "Where?" The nurse led him to a small waiting room. Naledi sat there, her bag on her lap, her posture straight and dignified. She looked different somehow, not like a beggar, like someone who knew her worth. Thabo stopped in the doorway, unsure. His pride wanted him to stride in confidently, to take charge, but his desperation made him hesitate. "You came?" he said quietly. Naledi looked at him, her eyes steady and unreadable. "I came for your son, not for you." Thabo nodded, accepting the cut. "I understand." She reached into her bag and pulled out the cloth-wrapped bottle. "This is the medicine that will save him." Thabo's breath caught. "The same medicine that healed your grandson?" "Yes, it's made from a root my grandmother gave me. It takes 3 days to prepare, and it must be administered carefully. Too much, and it's poison. Too little, and it won't work." Thabo stepped forward, reaching for the bottle. Naledi pulled it back. "Not yet. We need to talk first." Thabo's jaw tightened, but he forced himself to stay calm. "What do you want? Money? I'll give you whatever you ask." Naledi's eyes flashed. "You still don't understand. I don't want your money, Mr. Molefe. Money is what made you into the man who threw me out of your car. Money is what made you believe some lives matter more than others." Thabo looked away, unable to hold her gaze. "Then what do you want?" Naledi stood, the bottle still clutched in her hand. "I want you to answer a question honestly, and if you lie, I'll know. I'll walk out of here, and your son will die." Thabo's heart pounded. "Ask, why did you throw me out of your car?" Thabo opened his mouth, then closed it. The easy answer, the defensive answer, was that he was busy, distracted, that he didn't realize how serious her situation was. But Naledi's eyes told him she would not accept a comfortable lie. The truth was uglier, more painful. He took a breath. "Because you disgusted me," he said, the words like gravel in his throat. "You were poor, dirty, desperate, and I didn't want to be reminded that I came from the same place. I spent my whole life running from poverty, and seeing you there, begging, was like looking in a mirror I smashed years ago. I hated what you represented, so I threw you away." The silence that followed was crushing. Lindiwe had appeared in the doorway, listening, her face pale. She had never heard Thabo speak like this, never heard him admit to anything. Naledi nodded slowly. "Thank you for the truth." Thabo's voice broke. "Please, I know I was wrong. I know I was cruel, but my son doesn't deserve to pay for my sins. He's just a boy. He's innocent." "I know," Naledi said softly. "That's why I'm here." She held out the bottle. Thabo took it with trembling hands, and for a moment their fingers touched. He felt the warmth of her skin, the strength in her worn hands, and he realized something. This woman, whom he had dismissed as worthless, was saving his son's life. She had every reason to walk away, to let him suffer as she had suffered. But she chose mercy. She chose compassion. She chose to be better than he had ever been. Naledi gave him detailed instructions on how to administer the medicine, the dosage, the timing, the prayers to whisper while it took effect. Dr. Kumalo joined them, listening carefully, his scientific mind blending with traditional knowledge. They worked together, preparing Karabo for the treatment. Thabo wanted to do it himself, but his hands shook too badly. Naledi stepped forward. "Let me." She approached Karabo's bedside with the same gentleness she had shown to Mello. She lifted the boy's head carefully, brought the small cup to his lips, and whispered words in a language Thabo didn't understand. Karabo swallowed weakly, his face scrunching at the bitter taste. Naledi stroked his forehead, humming an old lullaby, and slowly, impossibly, the boy relaxed. For an hour, nothing changed. The machines continued their steady beeping. Karabo's breathing remained shallow. Thabo and Lindiwe were frozen, hardly daring to hope. Then, slowly, color began to return to the boy's cheeks. His breathing deepened, his eyelids fluttered. The fever that had burned for days started to break, sweat beading on his forehead as his body fought and won. Dr. Kumalo monitored the vitals, his eyes widening. "It's working. His oxygen levels are rising. His heart rate is stabilizing. My God, it's actually working." Lindiwe burst into tears, collapsing into a chair. Thabo stood motionless, watching his son return from the edge of death.
He wanted to shout, to cry, to fall to his knees in gratitude, but all he could do was stare at Naledi, this woman he had thrown away, this woman who held his son's life in her hands and chose to give it back. "Why?" he whispered. "After everything I did, why did you save him?" Naledi looked at him with eyes that had seen too much suffering and somehow still held kindness. "Because I'm not you," she said simply, "and because your son deserves a father who learns from this, who becomes the man he should have been all along." Fabo's knees buckled. He sank to the floor, his carefully constructed armor finally shattering completely. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I'm so sorry." Naledi placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch light but steady. "Sorry is a beginning," she said, "not an ending. Show me you mean it. Show your son. Show the world. Be better." Fabo nodded, unable to speak. Around them, the hospital room felt different, lighter somehow, as if a darkness had been lifted. Karabo stirred, his eyes opening slowly. "Papa?" "I'm here, son," Fabo said, moving to the bedside, taking his boy's hand. "I'm here." Karabo smiled weakly. "I had a dream about a kind grandmother." Fabo looked at Naledi, his eyes full of wonder and shame and gratitude all mixed together. "She's real," he said, "and she saved your life." Naledi gathered her things quietly, preparing to leave. Fabo stood. "Wait, please, let me repay you. Let me give you something, anything." Naledi shook her head. "You already gave me something, Mr. Molefe. You gave me the truth. That's worth more than money." She walked toward the door, then paused. "There is one thing." Fabo stepped forward eagerly. "Name it." "Teach your son to see people, all people, not just the ones who look like him or live like him or have money like him. Teach him that kindness is not weakness and that mercy is strength. Do that and you'll have repaid me." She left before he could respond. Fabo stood in the doorway, watching her walk down the hallway, her figure growing smaller until she disappeared around a corner. And for the first time in 20 years, Fabo Molefe felt like he could finally breathe. 3 weeks later, Karabo was released from the hospital, fully healed. The doctors called it a miracle. Dr. Kumalo wrote a paper on the case, carefully documenting the traditional remedy without revealing Naledi's identity, per her request. The medical community was skeptical, but intrigued. Fabo returned to his mansion, but it felt different now. The marble floors seemed cold, the expensive art on the walls looked hollow. The fountain in the driveway struck him as obscene, wasting water while people in townships walked miles for a single bucket. Lindy Wei noticed the change in him immediately. He was quieter, more thoughtful. He watched Karabo play with a gentleness that hadn't been there before, as if seeing his son clearly for the first time. One evening, Thabo sat Karabo down on the couch. "I want to tell you a story," he said, "about a woman who saved your life." Karabo listened with wide eyes as Thabo recounted everything, hiding nothing, not even his own cruelty. When he finished, Karabo was quiet for a long time. "Papa, why were you mean to her?" Thabo's throat tightened. "Because I forgot where I came from. I forgot what it's like to need help and have no one listen." Karabo frowned. "That's sad." Thabo nodded. "Yes, it is, but I'm going to do better. Will you help me?" The next morning, Thabo drove to the public hospital. He brought no bodyguards, no assistants, just himself. He found Naledi in the garden with Tumelo, who was now fully recovered, laughing and chasing butterflies. When she saw Thabo, her expression was cautious but not hostile. "Mr. Molefe?" "Thabo, please." He gestured to a bench. "May I sit?" Naledi nodded, and they sat in silence for a moment, watching Tumelo play. Thabo cleared his throat. "I've been thinking about what you said, about being better. I want to start, but I don't know how." Naledi looked at him thoughtfully. "Start with your workers, the people who clean your buildings, drive your cars, cook your food. Learn their names, ask about their families, see them." Thabo nodded, pulling out a notebook. He wrote it down like a business plan, which made Naledi smile faintly. "It's not a transaction," she said gently. "You can't check it off a list and move on. You have to mean it." "I know," Thabo said. "I'm trying." Over the following months, Thabo began to change, slowly at first, then more deliberately. He visited the factories he owned, not as an inspector, but as a listener. He heard about low wages, unsafe conditions, supervisors who treated workers like machines. He was ashamed. He had never asked before, never cared. He started implementing changes: better pay, health benefits, paid leave. His board of directors protested. "This will cut into profits," they argued. "Good," Thabo said. "We've been profiting off suffering long enough." Some board members resigned. Others stayed, intrigued by this new direction. The company's stock dipped initially, but employee satisfaction soared. Productivity increased. Word spread. People wanted to work for Thabo Molefe now, not because he paid the most, but because he treated them like human beings. Lindy Wei watched these changes with cautious hope. One night, as they lay in bed, she reached for his hand. "I don't know what happened to you in that hospital, but I'm grateful." Thabo squeezed her hand. "I met someone who showed me who I really was, and I didn't like what I saw." Lindy Wei smiled. "I like who you're becoming." They talked late into the night, really talked, something they hadn't done in years. Thabo apologized for the distance, the coldness, the years of prioritizing money over family. Lindy Wei cried, then laughed, then cried again. They began to rebuild what had been broken. Karabo noticed too. "Papa plays with me now," he told his mother proudly, "and he's not always on his phone." Lindy Wei kissed his forehead. "Your papa is learning to be present. That's a very grown-up thing to do." Meanwhile, Naledi and Tumelo returned to their village, but not before Thabo arranged something. He had quietly purchased a small house near the hospital, put it in Naledi's name, and ensured Tumelo's school fees were paid through university. When Naledi discovered this, she confronted Thabo immediately. "I told you I don't want your money." "This isn't money," Thabo said. "This is making sure Tumelo has the same opportunities my son has, not because I'm generous, but because it's right." Naledi studied him, then nodded slowly. "Teach him well. Teach him to work hard and to remember where he came from." "I will," Thabo promised, "and I'll visit, if you'll allow it. I want Karabo to know Tumelo. I want them to grow up understanding that they're not so different." Naledi's eyes softened. "That would be good."
The boys met a week later, shy at first, then quickly warming to each other. Karabo shared his toys. Tumelo taught him a game from the village involving stones and quick hands. They laughed and played without seeing wealth or poverty, just two boys being boys. Thabo and Naledi watched from a distance. "She's happy," Naledi said, nodding towards Lindy Way, who was smiling genuinely for the first time in years. Thabo nodded. "We're healing. Slowly, but we're healing." As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Thabo felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Peace. Not the false peace of control and power, but the real peace that comes from living honestly, from making amends, from choosing compassion over cruelty. Naledi stood to leave, Tumelo holding her hand. Before she went, she turns to Thabo. "You're doing well, Mr. Malefe. Keep going." Thabo smiled, a real smile, not the practiced one he used in boardrooms. "Thank you, Naledi, for everything." She nodded and walked away, her figure silhouetted against the setting sun. Thabo watched her until she disappeared, then turned back to his family. Karabo ran up to him, breathless and happy. "Papa, Tumelo invited me to his village. Can we go?" Thabo knelt down, meeting his son's eyes. "Yes, we can go, and I'll teach you about where your grandfather came from and about the people who make this country work, people like Naledi and Tumelo, people we should honor." Karabo hugged him tight. "I love you, Papa." Thabo closed his eyes, holding his son, and whispered, "I love you too, son, more than you'll ever know." The transformation had begun, but the journey was far from over.
But transformation is never simple, and the past does not release its grip easily. One evening, Thabo received a call from his lawyer, Anton, a slick man who had helped him crush competitors and evade regulations for years. "Thabo, we have a problem. The environmental lawsuit, the one against our mining operation. It's gaining traction." Thabo had been avoiding this. 3 years ago, his company had dumped waste into a river near a rural village. Hundreds of people got sick. Children developed rashes and respiratory problems. Thabo had buried the reports, bribed officials, and silenced journalists. It was business as usual. But now, with his new perspective, the memory of it made him sick. "What do they want?" Anton asked. "They want you to take responsibility, clean up the river, pay medical costs, and issue a public apology." Anton scoffed. "That'll cost millions, and the admission of guilt will open us up to more lawsuits." "Do it," Thabo said quietly. Anton paused. "What?" "I said do it, all of it. Clean the river, pay every medical bill, apologize publicly." "Thabo, that's financial suicide." "Then I'll die financially," Thabo replied. "But I won't lie anymore. I won't hide." Anton was silent for a long moment. "You've changed." "Yes," Thabo said, "I have." The lawsuit settlement was announced 2 weeks later. The media exploded. Some praised Thabo's accountability. Others accused him of PR manipulation. Activist groups remained skeptical. One journalist cornered him after a press conference. "Mr. Malefe, critics say this is just damage control, that you're trying to buy back your reputation. How do you respond?" Thabo met the camera's eye. "I don't care what critics say. I care about the people I hurt. If they never forgive me, I understand, but I won't stop trying to make it right." The clip went viral. Some people were moved. Others rolled their eyes. But Thabo didn't check social media. He was too busy visiting the village his company had poisoned, walking through it with engineers, environmental experts, and community leaders, listening to their pain and anger, absorbing it without defense. One woman, whose daughter had been hospitalized for months, confronted him in front of everyone. "You destroyed our water, you destroyed our lives, and now you come here with your money like that fixes everything?" Thabo stood still, letting her words hit him. "You're right," he said. "Money doesn't fix this. It doesn't give your daughter back the months she suffered. It doesn't erase the pain. But it's all I have to offer. That and my word that I'll spend the rest of my life making sure this never happens again." The woman's eyes filled with tears. She turned and walked away. Thabo didn't follow.
He stood there, feeling the weight of consequences, the price of redemption. It was heavy, heavier than he imagined, but he would carry it. Later that week, Naledi visited him unexpectedly. She had heard about the lawsuit and the settlement. "You're making enemies," she observed. Tabo nodded. "Powerful ones. Some of my former associates are furious. They say I'm betraying the industry." Naledi sat across from him. "Are you afraid?" Tabo considered. "Yes, but more afraid of who I was than who I'm becoming." Naledi smiled. "Good. Fear keeps us honest." She pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a letter from Tamelo, written in careful, childish handwriting. It thanked Tabo for helping with school fees and invited him to a village festival. "Caribou would love this," Naledi said, "and it would be good for you, to see how people live outside your world." Tabo took the letter. "We'll come, I promise." The festival was held in Naledi's village, a small community of mud brick houses and dusty roads, but rich in warmth and connection. Music filled the air. Women danced in bright fabrics. Men roasted meat over open fires. Children ran everywhere, shrieking with joy. Tabo was overwhelmed at first, clinging to Lindy Way, but Tamelo grabbed his hand and pulled him into a game, and soon Caribou was laughing, covered in dirt, completely happy. Tabo and Lindy Way sat with the elders, sharing food, listening to stories. An old man named Bongani asked Tabo about his work. Tabo answered honestly, not hiding his past or his mistakes. Bongani listened, then nodded. A man who admits his wrongs is braver than a man who never makes mistakes, because the second man is a liar. Everyone laughed. Tabo felt the tension in his chest ease. He felt accepted, not because of his wealth or power, but because he was honest. As the sun set, Naledi stood beside him, watching the children play. "You've come far," she said, "but the journey doesn't end. There will always be more work, more people to help, more wrongs to right." "I know," Tabo said, "and I'm ready." Naledi handed him something, the leather pouch that had held the root. "It's empty now," she said, "but keep it. Let it remind you of where you've been and where you're going." Tabo took the pouch, holding it carefully. "Thank you, Naledi, for saving my son, for saving me." Naledi shook her head. "I didn't save you, Tabo. You saved yourself. You just needed to see clearly first." They stood in silence, watching the festival. Two people from different worlds brought together by fate, pain, and ultimately, grace. When the night ended and Tabo's family prepared to leave, Tamelo hugged Caribou tightly. "Come back soon." Caribou grinned. "I will, I promise." On the drive home, Caribou fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted and happy. Lindy Ray reached over and took Tabo's hand. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. Tabo squeezed her hand, his eyes on the road ahead. "I'm not the man I want to be yet, but I'm trying. That's all any of us can do," Lindy Way said. "Try, and keep trying." Tabo nodded, and for the first time in his life, he felt like he was on the right path. Not the path to wealth or power, the path to being human. It was harder, messier, filled with setbacks and doubts, but it was real. And that, he realized, was worth more than all the money in the world. The journey of redemption had truly begun, and though the road was long, Tabo was finally walking it with open eyes and a willing heart. 2 years later, Tabo stood on a stage in Soweto, facing a crowd of over 1,000 people. It was the opening of the Naledi Community Center, a sprawling facility offering free healthcare, education programs, job training, and legal aid. Tabo had funded it entirely, but he had insisted it be named after the woman who changed his life, not himself. Naledi sat in the front row, Tamelo beside her, both dressed in their best clothes. She had resisted the honor at first, but Tabo had been insistent. "This isn't about me," he had told her. "It's about making sure people remember that mercy is powerful, that kindness changes the world." Now, speaking to the crowd, Tabo told his story. He held nothing back. He talked about his cruelty, his pride, the day he threw a desperate woman from his car. He talked about his son's illness, his helplessness, and the moment Naledi chose to save Caribou, despite having every reason to let him die. "I stand here today not as a hero," Tabo said, his voice steady, but a man who was shown mercy when he deserved none. And that mercy transformed me. He gestured to the building behind him. This center isn't charity, it's justice. It's a small attempt to balance the scales I tipped so far in my own favor for so many years. I can't undo the past, but I can work towards a better future. The crowd applauded, but Tabo held up his hand. There's one more thing. I've been meeting with other business leaders. We're forming a coalition committed to ethical practices, fair wages, and environmental responsibility. We're calling it the Naledi Initiative. We're not perfect. We'll make mistakes, but we're committed to doing better. He stepped back. The crowd rose to their feet. Some people cried, others cheered. Naledi sat quietly, her eyes wet, but her face calm. After the ceremony, people swarmed Tabo, shaking his hand, taking pictures, thanking him. But eventually, he found his way to Naledi. She stood under a tree, watching the crowd, a small smile on her face. "You did well," she said. Tabo shook his head. "You did well. You showed me that one act of mercy can change everything." Naledi touched his arm. "Remember this feeling, Tabo, when things get hard, when people criticize or doubt you. Remember why you started." Tabo nodded. "I will." Carabao and Tamelo ran up, breathless and laughing. "Papa, can we go inside? Tamelo wants to see the library."
Tabo ruffled both boys' hair. "Go ahead, we'll catch up." The boys ran off, and Tabo watched them go, his heart full. Lindy Wei joined him, slipping her hand into his. "Our son is happy," she said. "Really happy, because he's learning what matters," Tabo replied, "and so am I." Over the following years, the Naledi Initiative grew. More companies joined, labor conditions improved across multiple industries, environmental regulations were strengthened. It wasn't perfect. There were setbacks, scandals, and companies that joined only for PR, but the movement was real and it was growing. Tabo became a different kind of public figure, not the ruthless tycoon, but the reformed businessman. He was invited to speak at universities, conferences, and community gatherings. He always told the same story, never softening it, never making himself look better. People needed to hear the truth. Some of his old associates mocked him. Tabo the Saint, they called him. Tabo the Hypocrite. He ignored them. Their opinions no longer mattered. One day, Tabo received a call from the woman whose daughter had been poisoned by his company's waste. Her name was Tandi, and she asked to meet him. They sat in a small cafe, and for a long time neither spoke. Finally, Tandi said, "My daughter is better now, fully recovered." Tabo exhaled. "I'm glad." Tandi looked at him. "I hated you for years." "I know, but I've been watching. The center, the initiative, the cleanup, you're actually trying." Tabo nodded. "I'll try for the rest of my life. It still won't be enough." Tandi's eyes softened. "Maybe not, but it's something, and maybe that's all any of us can give. Something." They talked for an hour. When they parted, Tandi shook his hand. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. On Karabo's 10th birthday, Tabo and Lindy Wei threw a party, not in their mansion, but in the village where Tumelo lived. Children from both worlds played together. Adults from different backgrounds shared food and stories. There were no barriers, no divisions, just people being people. Naledi watched from a distance, her heart full. Tabo approached her. "You're quiet." "I'm thinking," she said, "about how strange life is, how one moment can change everything." Tabo nodded. "That moment on the road changed me forever." "It changed both of us," Naledi said. "I learned that mercy is stronger than revenge, and you learned that power without compassion is worthless." They stood together, watching the children play, watching two worlds blend into one celebration. That night, as the stars appeared, Karabo asked his father a question. "Papa, why do you work so hard to help people?" Tabo knelt down. "Because someone helped me when I didn't deserve it, and that changed who I am."
"Will I be like you when I grow up?" Karabo asked. "I hope you'll be better," Tabo said. "I hope you'll learn from my mistakes and not make them yourself." Karabo hugged him. "I'll try, Papa." And that, Tabo realized, was all anyone could ask. To try, to be better, to choose mercy over cruelty, compassion over pride, love over fear. The journey was never finished. There would always be more work to do, more people to help, more wrongs to right. But the journey itself was the destination. Becoming a better person was not a goal to achieve, but a path to walk every single day. As Tabo looked around at the party, at his son laughing with Tumelo, at Lindy Way talking with Naledi like old friends, at the village and the city coming together under one sky, he felt something profound settle in his chest. Gratitude. Not for what he had, but for what he had become, for the man he was still becoming. Years would pass. Karabo and Tumelo would grow up together, both attending university, both carrying forward the lessons their families had learned. Karabo would join his father's company, not to hoard wealth, but to distribute it more fairly. Tumelo would become a doctor, returning to rural villages to provide care where it was needed most. They would remain brothers in spirit, a living bridge between two worlds. Naledi would live to see her great-grandchildren, her legacy not just in the root that healed bodies, but the mercy that healed souls. And Tabo, the billionaire who once threw a beggar from his car, would spend the rest of his days proving that transformation is possible, that no one is beyond redemption, that one moment of mercy can ripple across a lifetime, touching countless lives, changing the very fabric of the world. The leather pouch, empty now of the miraculous root, sat on Tabo's desk as a daily reminder. Inside, he had placed a small stone from the road where he had thrown Naledi out, a stone marked with her blood, a stone that represented his greatest shame and his greatest teacher. Every morning, before starting his work, he would hold that pouch and remember. Remember the dust rising. Remember her face as she fell. Remember the choice she made to save his son despite everything. And he would whisper the same prayer. "Help me be worthy of the mercy I was shown. Help me pass it forward. Help me never forget." And in that remembering, in that daily choice to be better, Tabo found his true wealth, not in his bank accounts or his properties or his business empire, but in the lives he touched, the people he helped, the world he slowly, steadily helped to heal. The billionaire who threw a beggar from his car had learned the most valuable lesson of all, that we are not measured by what we accumulate, but what we give away. Not by our power, but by our compassion. Not by how high we climb, but how many we lift up on the way. And that mercy, freely given when it is least deserved, has the power to transform not just one life, but generations. The story ended not with perfection, but with progress. Not with a fairy tale conclusion, but with the messy, beautiful reality of people choosing to be better every single day. And somewhere in the space between earth and sky, between justice and grace, between who we were and who we can become, fate smiled. Because this was always the plan. Not to punish the proud, but to humble them. Not to destroy the cruel, but to transform them. Not to abandon anyone, but to give everyone a chance at redemption. One beggar, one billionaire, one moment of mercy, and the whole world changed forever. Dear viewers, what lessons did you take away from Tabo and Naledi's story? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our stories. Remember, we all have the power to choose mercy over cruelty, compassion over pride. The question is, will we? Thanks for watching and stay blessed.